Hey, it's Tommy London. Face to face, Ozzy's Boneyard Instagram Live. Let me just get set up here. Yeah, I got to turn off the comments today because I have an amazing guest with me today. The legendary rock and roll photographer Mark Weiss. He just put out a new book. It's called The Decade That Rocked. I have it right here. Hold on. Look at that beauty. Thick book, man. Now, it doesn't come with the pink Post-it notes. That's for me to see if Mark some pictures I'm hoping to show and share with you and Mark. And there's one thing before we get Mark on, I want you to keep in mind. Mark's photos helped to launch a ton of music careers and establish the images that we know and love to this very day of a lot of our favorite artists. And it's important to know three essential things that every band in the 80s needed. First was the music, which they worked with all different producers. Then it was the videos, where they worked with different directors. And then the photographs. And they all worked with one guy, Mark Weiss. And I have him here today. Let's find him. Mark, there you are, baby. Here he is, legendary, the Weiss guy himself, Mark Weiss. What's up? I'm going sideways. I'm going sideways with you. There we go.
How you doing, man?
How are you, man?
Thanks for the introduction. Dang.
Yeah, dude, of course. Oh, bro, I grew up with, I've told you this before. I grew up with your photos, Mark. And as a musician myself, the inspiration didn't only come from the music. It came from the images of the band. And that's what made all of us want to be a rock star. And we owe that to you, so thank you for that.
Well, without you rock stars, there wouldn't be photographers that needed to take pictures of rock stars,
That's true. It's a two-way street, I guess you could say.
Absolutely.
So how you holding up with the quarantine and all this craziness? The pandemic.
Everyone's healthy in my family, so that, that's the best thing. And then I've been slaving away on this book for the last literally 5 years. In the last 2 years, I've been really slaving away, not going on vacations, nothing. So
Wow.
I've been in this office, and then I was ready to my plan was to jump on some of these tours and shadow them and do some radio promo and some galleries and, spread the word, go on all these summer tours and do book signings. And because of what happened, now it's all social media. So now I'm really going full force. So I'm the same place I was for the last 5 years, so it's all right.
What's crazy, man? This year was going to be such a huge year for rock. I mean, the tours of bands getting together. I mean, the stadium tour alone with Crew, Leopard, and Poison, and Joan Jett, to me spoke volumes about that music and how relevant, how big it still is today. And, they didn't cancel, they postponed. So that's always good, right?
I mean, for me, it's like I have another year to prep,
Yeah.
Another year. I mean, what I love to do is do another book, because I always wanted my first book to be a book of, my life and that decade. And then after that, I wanted to do a book maybe on Van Halen or Bon Jovi or Ozzy or Motley Crue. So maybe, I always wanted the participants of the bands to be involved. So maybe I'm going to approach the bands now and see if anyone wants to do a book. And then when the tours start next year, it'd be perfect timing. I could go on a tour again, promote both books.
Right. I think that's a great idea, man.
So,
yeah. Hey, I'm sold, brother. I buy 2 copies of your book so I can put the pictures on my walls again.
Actually, I include in my my bundles. I have centerfolds because everyone loves the centerfolds, and my first picture was in Circus magazine, was a centerfold of Steven Tyler. So I included a centerfold of I have Vince and I have Lita and Sebastian.
Yeah, I saw that. Awesome. Well, I also noticed in the quarantine, we'll get into the book in 1 second, but you've been busy not just with the book, but you also have a show on YouTube, The Weiss Guy, right?
Well, that we filmed, we were just about to finish it, and we were going to do some flashback scenes. It's basically these guys that are from the 80s that never grew up, and they're they're basically stalking the Weiss Guy. And, we have some cameos with Brian Wheat from Tesla, where they sneak on the bus, and also Chip Snuff's in the fantasy scene, where he does a Fly High Michelle appearance. He does a little song there. And a lot of his songs are in the soundtrack. And it's just a fun, 12-minute episodic kind of adventure, and we're hoping to take it to some big levels.
Oh, I enjoyed it, man. I really did. And it really connected with me. Like when they approach you about going backstage, you're like, yeah, sure, man. Come on.
I ain't getting those dirt goes in. Yeah, it's
So
fun.
fun.
I feel like with the flashback scenes, it's always good. The kids might connect to it a little bit more. So I'll have someone playing like a young Mark in the 20s, and then those two guys, Creeper and Jesse, have them as like 15, 16-year-olds, and they're so it's like a flashback, and then it moves forward. So we're connecting it together.
I thought it was great.
Thanks.
And and your book, like you said, like speaking how you were about being kind of, it's like an autobiography of sorts. I love how you talk about your life and then the stories behind the pictures. Of course, it's all about the photographs, but I really enjoyed it. It was I found it to be very inspirational, because when I read your stories, I felt that you were showing that your instincts and your talent can lead you to your dreams. And that's what I got when I read your biography parts in the book. And I thought that was really cool, man.
Thanks. Yeah, I really felt it was important to like show the early years. So, the book is 1980 to 1990, but I wanted it to show how I got there. And I felt it was important. And I wanted to, tell the tale of how I got my first camera, some troubles in my house that kind of got me, into taking photographs, because it was my outlet. And it kind of got me out of some dark places that I had, because my brother had some mental illness and things like that. So it really kind of like helped me, and it was my tool, and it kind of got me, to where, I am today. And thank God for everything that happened in my life, the way it did.
Yeah.
It just came together.
Well, how did you, for people that don't know, how did you get involved with photography, and how did it lead to rock and roll?
I used to mow lawns when I was 12. Used to go around my development, Lake Ridge in Matawan, New Jersey, and knock on doors for $5. I'd do their lawn. And this one guy had this really like long lawn, and I just knocked on his door and I said, "You need your lawn mowed?" And he said, "No, I do it myself." And I go, "No, it doesn't look that way." So he kind of looked at me, like a smart ass. And then he said, "I'll tell you what, kid, if you mow my lawn for the season, I'll give you this camera." He probably never used it, if I sitting on the shelf. So I looked at it, I'm like, all right, that looks like it's worth $1 million, So right. I did, and that was my first camera, and that's how I got involved in photography.
That's incredible.
And
I also read your, what's that?
No, I was just gonna say, fast forwarding into going to concerts, I started becoming interested in going to concerts, and then I kind of started sneaking my cameras in.
Right. So that's what I read in your book. So you skipped the prom, your senior prom, to go shoot Led Zeppelin.
Yeah,
I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, I wasn't into that kind of thing. There was either like I don't know, the kids that kind of just hung out on the hill and kind of partied and hung out, and then there was the jocks. And I always thought the proms were for jocks. I don't know. I was never into it. And Led Zeppelin did play. I mean, I was invited to go and all that, but I just thought, I'm going to Zeppelin. And I used to sneak my cameras in and sell them in front of the concert. So that's what I did.
Now, you did that for KISS. In your book, you mentioned that. And I used to go to the Philadelphia Spectrum, too, so I related to a lot of the stuff you were saying, that you saw concerts there. Were the KISS photos you took, were they black and white? I always loved the black and whites of KISS with the makeup. Yeah,
actually, the black and white, that's a full page in my early years book, 77, that was the photo that I was selling at the time when I got arrested. Wow. It was in front of the Garden.
It was the Garden.
Yeah, that was the Garden. I shot the Spectrum too, but that show was the Garden. And I just, they were playing 2 or 3 nights. I went the first night, took pictures, and they sold them in front of the concerts the next night. And I got arrested like the shirt sellers did. And then the next day, I went to jail overnight. And the next day, the judge, I went before the judge. He said, if you want your pictures back, you got to come back and, get a lawyer and all that. And I just left them there. And then that day kind of changed my life, because then I went home and I'm like, now what am I going to do? And I looked at my Circus magazine that I used to subscribe to since I was like 13.
Right.
And I looked at the address and I said, oh, it's New York City. I'm just going to go there. And I went there, and it was just good timing. The art director was off deadline, waited around a couple hours for him to come out. I introduced myself, and here's a 17-year-old kid, with his portfolio with big eyes, and of course he's going to talk to me, you know. So so I went in his office. He gave me some advice, and 6 months later I came back with some Aerosmith photos that they needed, and it ended up being a centerfold.
Wow, that's incredible. And well, you also, was your first photo used in Circus of Bruce Springsteen?
Yeah, that actually, that was about the same time. That was a small little photograph of Bruce during the Darkness tour. So that was about the same time the Aerosmith came out.
Oh, okay.
That was at the Spectrum. That was at the Spectrum, actually. Yeah.
That was the Spectrum. So I have a ton of questions for you, because all the artists you have shot, I'm fans of each one. So I'm going to try to get to as many as I can. And we'll also see if some viewers have questions. So hit me with some questions, and we'll try to get to those later. One of the, starting from the early years, Ramones, you really captured the essence of the band, especially Dee Dee, because I had the opportunity to meet the Ramones. When I saw your photograph, I was like, wow, you nailed it. Like, that was been a pretty surreal moment. Joey, Johnny, Marky.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Ramones. You know, I used to go to CBGBs and Max's and Great Gildersleeves and all that. But when I had the opportunity to photograph them and meet them, that was the first time I met them. They were just like really cool. They were just like they are, and pretty quiet. And they're not real posers, but they kind of like, I guided them a bit. And then when I took out the Boy Howdy cans, they came alive a little bit.
Oh,
so
yeah.
There's a picture of them. It's like a portrait photo. And then there's a picture in the book of them holding the Boy Howdy cans.
Right. And now this is the early stages of MTV. And you mentioned something that I found very interesting in your book and was spot on, that when MTV came into play, music, it was a whole different playing field. And now the visual was just, if not more than important than the music itself. And you were right on the cusp of that. And this might have been around the time that I guess you met Ozzy, my boss.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a perfect storm. That, I mean, really, the 80s for rock music was the perfect storm. And then when MTV came in, it was just a slam dunk.
Yeah.
MTV definitely changed visuals and how record companies signed bands and why they signed them. And imagery was a big part of it, along with photography. So really, for that decade, photography was very essential, as was video, and everything went hand in hand.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, your relationship with Ozzy, it seems like you had a real connection with him to bring him out of a shell that I don't think I saw elsewhere, or prior, definitely. I mean, you were able to make him, or not make him, but just kind of suggest to him to try different things, wearing a tutu. I mean, this is the Prince of Darkness. Now he's the Princess of Darkness, wearing a tutu, dressing in a dress. You know, but the one that always captivated me was when he was the Easter Bunny.
Right. Well, well, I did a shoot in 1984, I believe, and I was supposed to do a bunch of different photo shoots, and we were doing a playoff for Faces Magazine, Diary of a Madman. So we were going to call it Diary of a Mad Housewife, because the issue was in the same month as Mother's Day. And the idea was to dress Ozzy up in curlers and have an ironing board, and so that was it. And then we're going to do some cool rock shots. Now, there was no plans for the Easter Bunny in this photo shoot, but I shared my studio with a commercial photographer, and when they walked into my studio, Sharon and Ozzy looked over in the corner. He goes, "What's that, Mark?" And I go, "What?" And I looked over, and I didn't even notice it. It was just like this leftover bunny outfit with the flower trestles that my other photographer that I rented from. We rented a place together. So I looked at it and I quickly said, "What do you mean? What's that? That's what you're wearing for the cover." He looked at me like, "What? And I said, "Yeah, we're going to have fun." And then Sharon's like, "Have fun, boys." And then I remember, Ozzy going, "Sharon," for the first time. And then she left us, and then he's like, "All right, let's get to it," And I couldn't believe he put it on, He's like, do I really have to do this, Mark? I'm like, "Ozzy, it'll be fun. Don't worry, I'll show you the pictures." And he put it on, and then we got that out of the way, and we just put it to the side. I didn't even tell Sharon about it, So later on, Sharon came back with Amy, Amy is, their firstborn. We used her on the ironing board for the
Oh, that's
He's
her.
like,
Wow.
that's Amy, yeah. And we did some other shots, and that was that. So when I got the film back, I'm like, I don't even want to show this to them. You know, it's like I'm you know, I'm leaving Ozzy, Bunny Ozzy, in the closet. Leave him alone. You know, so I left him there, and then about 15 years later, maybe 20 years later, um, uh, maybe even longer, maybe 25. I sent Sharon and Ozzy the picture, and they just cracked up. And you know, next thing you know, it was all over social media. And I was like, I guess Ozzy's out of the bunny closet. And then I started, every year they post it, I post it, and it's like, yeah, because back then, you know, it's Ozzy, you know, the Prince of Darkness, you know.
Right.
But you know, Ozzy had a sense of humor. We had fun together. It was one of many shoots we did. That was probably, I guess you would call it, the silliest.
Right.
We had some crazy shoots, like when he shaved his head, and you know, that was actually in the book with the Mickey Mouse ears. You know, that was another one. But yeah, we've, you know, always had good ones.
Was that shoot where he shaved his head almost jeopardized because he shaved his head?
Well, what happened was it was a magazine cover for Circus 13th anniversary. I got this cake, some black balloons, went over to their house where they were staying, set up in the garage, and then, you know, I had this big cake, everything props. And then Sharon came out and said, you know, Ozzy shaved his head. I'm like, last night. I'm like, oh great. I'm already packing up. I'm already packing up my equipment, going, you know, with my tail between my legs. And she goes, no, but we're gonna do it. We'll figure something out. And then me and Sharon put our heads together, and next thing you know, she's painting his head with like that. And I saw these balloons, and I just stuck them on his head, and there it was.
That's incredible. What a moment, man. I like how you make, you get lemons and you're making lemonade.
All the time.
You know what I thought about too when I saw those photos of Ozzy in those different situations like that. Oh, by the way, my favorite photo is the one where he's on the rooftop with the cape.
Right. Yeah, that was in Asbury Park Convention Hall. Moments before
shot.
he went on stage, 81. Yeah, I think Iron Maiden opened up for him.
Wow, that's a great shot.
Without Bruce, of course.
Yeah. But you know what was interesting that I had read a long time ago when the Osbourne show was on, a lot of people said it was the first time that they saw a different side of Ozzy. Oh, wow, we're seeing this other side of Ozzy. That's simply not true. You brought out the other side of Ozzy before any reality show did or anything else. I mean, that was a whole different side of a Prince of Darkness that people were like, what? And But it made sense. You know, like, you have a great instinct. You saw that, or else it wouldn't have worked. And that's an important element to what you do. Like, you have that sixth sense. That's a gift.
Yeah, I just like having fun and, you know, having props and just trying to push the limit a little bit as much as I can until they tell me to get the hell out of there, you know. But
well,
you know, the 80s was a fun time, you know. Everyone, they weren't so like, you know, they weren't so just, you know, stick up their ass or anything. Everyone was just like want to have a good time, and everyone were posers, you know, and
yeah,
it was just great time to be a photographer.
Right. Well, that leads me to the next guy who's probably one of the most photogenic frontmen you probably have ever shot, and it's my favorite band of all time, Van Halen. David Lee Roth jumping off that riser with the split in the air. Come on, who didn't want to be a rock star after seeing that?
I think I think everyone in the 80s studied Van Halen. Yeah, I mean everything. It's like they were the essential rock band for that decade. They set the stage for every band that had success. And Diamond Dave was awesome. You know, he was a poser. He liked his picture taken. You know, Eddie was you know, all the guys top of their game, and together they were just a great band. They were the party band. Of course.
Yeah. You have any great a great Dave Lee Roth story you can share with us that comes to mind? Anything?
Yeah, in 80, I think it was like 83, 84. They hired me for a few shows, and they said whatever they want, do, you know, what kind of photos. I'm thinking, all right, backstage, you know, live photo shoot, you know, before the show. I wasn't expecting a call from David in the morning, the day before the show, to meet him outside in the courtyard and take photos of him flying a kite. And and that's what I did. I went outside and I went out there and he was flying a kite, and I'm not really I have my cameras, and he's looking over his shoulder and he's like, you know, what are you waiting for? You know, I'm like, oh, okay. And then the kite got stuck in the tree, and then he climbed up. He went on the security guard's shoulders and, you know, got the kite out of the tree, and he was making sure I'm taking pictures of, you know, during all this. So after that, I got like, I pretty much could do what I wanted.
Right. I feel that he would be an easy person to work with.
Definitely. He loved the camera, you know.
Yeah.
You know, whenever I went backstage, you know, he would be warming up or getting dressed, and even if he was just finishing that, he would do it again just so I would take pictures of that whole thing. He wanted everyone to see what it was like to be a rock star.
Right, right. Oh, no one painted the picture better than him, you know?
No doubt.
I never had a desire for assless chaps, but he still made them look cool.
Yeah, I know, right?
And then around the same time, that era was Quiet Riot, and you became really close with Kevin DuBrow.
Yeah, Kevin. Yeah, Kevin. I first met him in Madison Square Garden. I did this photo shoot for the single sleeve for "Bang Your Head" or "Come On Feel the Noise." I think both of them used it. And Frankie did this painting, kind of graffiti, kind of around it, and they wrapped themselves in the blankets. And it was iconic image. It's one of my favorite images, actually. And then
go ahead.
And then we became friends. And then they went on tour, and the album ended up being #1. And it was just, you know, I went on tour with them. Anytime I went to LA, Kevin would let me stay at his house. He gave me keys to his house, so when he was on tour, I would stay there. So we were pretty close.
That's awesome. I'm trying to show some of the pictures. I don't know if they'll transcend on my little.
Oh yeah.
That's shot.
That's the background that Frankie made.
Yeah. That's awesome. You mentioned in your book too, as you were friends with Kevin DuBrow. I found this pretty interesting because I remember as a kid reading the Circus magazines. Kevin DuBrow would sling a lot of mud, a lot of other.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned, I found this really interesting that when you mentioned in your book that when you were hanging out in LA and you tell people, oh yeah, I'm staying at Kevin DuBrow's house, like they would kind of, you know, maybe look around and roll their eyes. Was that because of the mudslinging he would do, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, Kevin, that was Kevin. You know, he was not shy about letting him, you know, what everyone thought, you know, what he thought of everyone. And, you know, he had a little animosity in the beginning, and then he became this #1 act. And then everyone was kind of like, you know, they still wouldn't give him cred, really. And he would just open his mouth, and he would just like put bands down left and right, just like a kid in school, you know?
Yeah.
That was just Kevin, you know? And then
right.
when I did go to the Rainbow and someone would come up to me and say, where you staying? And I told them, I go, oh, like that, they would do that. And I'm like, you know, I'm friends with everyone, you know, like, come on. I said, he's a good guy. And then one cover in Faces, which in one of the opening chapters has him tied up. So he has a sense of humor, you know? So we tied him up, we put a gag in his mouth, and that was on the cover of one of the rock magazines. He knew he had a big mouth. He knew he had it, you know.
He was like a pro wrestler. I mean, hey, it made me want to read the magazine, you know, like, oh, what's Kevin DuBrow going to say? And it was first heavy metal record to hit #1.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of record companies after that said, all right, we're going to be still being on a signing spree.
Yeah. And then I guess, you know, so he was tight with you with going to your wedding and all that kind of stuff, correct? Like,
yep. I invited like a lot of my wedding, and a lot of my good friends, my rocker friends. A lot of them were on tour. Kevin came. Zach was there, who just got into Ozzy. He just got in Ozzy. And young Sebastian Bach from Madam X. I just did a shoot with them a few months before, and I invited them. I didn't think they were going to come, but I think Sebastian talked the band into coming, and they drove down and spent up. Yeah, so we had a good time at the wedding. Went up and jammed it. They took over the wedding band's equipment.
That's amazing. Hey, Mark, hold on 1 second. You know, I'm having technical difficulty here. Hold on 1 minute.
Okay.
It should be fixed. That should be it. I just got to change location. Hold on. Yeah, but that's pretty wild. Kevin, you broke at the wedding and all that. And then now we're up to Twisted Sister, you know? And how did you befriend those guys? East Coast thing? Little connection there?
Actually, the first time I met them, they don't remember when I met them, but Neil Thomas from White Tiger was like a kind of a rival band at the time. They were Twisted Sister and White Tiger, and they both like packed these 2,000 seat, you know, clubs. And I was there. I shot White Tiger. One of my first photo shoots, I did studio shoots of like a heavy metal band, and Neil kind of wanted to show me off to the Twisted guys. So we went to the Fountain Casino, and he kind of introduced me because I was working for Circus at the time. And he's like, you know, you should, you know, maybe shoot Twisted Sister. They're getting big, or they are big. You know, let me hook you up. And I went there, and they kind of just blew me off. And, you know, Neil was like, you know, you want him to shoot you? You know, he's with Circus. He's like, just get out of here. They were just blowing us off. So I left, and I put my cameras away. I didn't shoot him that night. And we were just hanging out at the end of the ballroom. And during one of the cover songs, one of the Stone songs, he goes, D picks one guy out of the audience, and they put a light on him if they're not, like, you know, headbanging. And I wasn't the kind of guy that, like, you know, headbanged. You know, I like the music. I nodded my head a little bit, you know, but I'm not gonna, if someone tells me to put my hand up, like, I'm just not that kind of guy. You know. So I didn't, and D picked me out of the crowd of like 3,000 people, had the light on me, you know, aren't you too cool? You know, I ended up walking out and then coming around, you know, it's like it was, and then that was it until I got a call from their management in 1984 to just do the album cover. And so that was the first time I really met everyone. I mean, they have no recollection of that day.
Right.
You know, I even talked to them about it, and they remember the show, and they remember picking someone out of the audience at every show. And I just told, well, I was that one guy at the Fountain Casino. Yeah. So it's a good, funny story.
Well, you know, what's interesting in your book as well, when you talk about the Stay Hungry shoot, which Mark did the album cover for it. By the way, if you just joined us, Mark Weiss, amazing, legendary rock and roll photographer, talking about his new book, which is incredible, The Decade That Rocked, and Stay Hungry. And what I found interesting about this was, again, your instincts. Here you are shooting the band and for that album, and it's group shots. And after I read what you wrote, I saw it in the pictures even more. How when you shot them as a band, as great as they are as a unit, D has that persona that's larger than life. And when he was with the band, after you mentioned it, I could see that it looks like D's kind of holding back. And did you sense that and say, hey, I got to get a few shots of this guy on his own because there's something here? And which became the iconic album cover.
Yeah. Well, the idea was to have both, like the back cover was them huddling around a table with a rat in it and the bone, and that there was in street clothes, and then the other shot was them in their persona with the makeup, and we were supposed to put the two pictures together, but because it was such a small room and the light bulb was in the way, and it wasn't like Photoshop at the time when it was so easy, it kind of didn't work. But even if it did work, it didn't work because there was no energy in those group shots of them staying around. Yeah. Like D did hold back, and the other couple of the guys were kidding around and joking around all the time, and I'm just trying to focus on getting the composition down. And all right, now we got the composition down. Now I got to get the vibe and the attitude, and it just, it was a 22-hour shoot. So at the end, I mean, technically, I did everything I could have possibly done. We did individuals, we did street clothes shots against a brick wall, the works, like multiple sets. And then at 4 a.m, everyone's leaving. I said, does anyone want to do any individuals? And, one last thing. And everyone just said, no, we're out of here. And D's like, I'll do it. And so D, went in the room, and then he grabbed the bone and just started banging it around, making noises and just, putting holes in the wall. And like, there's film back in those days, and there was like the last roll of 36 exposures, and on the last frame was that photo.
Wow. You really capture, I mean, Mark, that's an iconic shot. Like when you think of that era of music, that comes to mind instantly. But what's interesting too that you mentioned in the book is that it almost jeopardized the band from breaking up, or at least created some tension with Dee now being on the cover of the record.
Yeah, I didn't know at the time, because all I did was, bring the photos to the record company, and they decided whatever they were going to do. There was no secret like ploy to like put Dee on the cover.
Right.
Everyone wanted the band. Dee wanted the band. He loved the idea that Mark Mendoza came up with, and he wanted the band on the cover, as a band, but it just didn't say anything. And then that photo, when they saw it, they were like, this says what the band's about. And then Dee became like the Cyndi Lauper of heavy metal, the face.
Yeah, wow, what a great analogy. That's so true. And then you went with them to the PMRC.
I went with Dee Dee. I went with Dee. I was their photographer at that point. We just like really, we hit it off. And whenever they went on tour, needed publicity photos, whatever the case may be, I would be called. And if they didn't call me, I'd make sure I was there and just do it. Yeah. And the PMRC, he called me up. He says, Mark, I'm gonna go over there. Why don't you come over? So we went on a plane together, and it was right before the next album was released, Come Out and Play, and I was involved in that. I did that cover too, and so we went, and he just like took it over. He just took it over, and I was by his side. I was part of his entourage, him and Joe Gerber, and we were just like kind of kicked ass, and we did photos in the back room with Frank Zappa and kidding around the senator's room office, going through their desks, and found some labels. we found some of their labels that they were going to propose. I have pictures of them holding them up and like ripping them up and stuff like that. So, but then, once he walked out, and when he walked out, he had my photo that I took that's on the t-shirt, because I did all the merch, all the photos on the t-shirt. So it was kind of cool seeing Dee walk out with my photo on it. Right. And kind of like, commenting, when they had a slideshow later on, some of my photos were up there, and they were commenting about them. Like there was actually a photo of Ozzy with a knife through a Ziggy doll that we did in New York at the Ritz, and there was blood coming out, and it said, "Have a nice day." They showed that, like, how could Ozzy think of it? It's like, I just brought it there, and he just held it for 3 seconds, So it's like, it's like a, to put a label on music. It's I guess they were just trying to shut it down. I mean, there were some things that weren't proper, but generally, like, rock and roll has a good message. Yeah,
but that was a historical moment you were part of. You were actually part of quite a few historical moments. I'm going to hit a few in a bit, like the US Festival, right? And that's amazing. Aerosmith. Now, there was a problem there with Aerosmith when they were now you met them early on, I assume, and you befriended them. Especially, were you tighter with Joe Perry or Steven or both, or just the whole group?
No, everybody. When Joe split, it's like I became friends with them when they kind of broke up. When Steven went with Jimmy Crespo, they had that new formation because they were managed by Lieber Krebs, and I was working with Lieber Krebs a lot. And then Joe went solo, and Joe was just playing clubs. And when Joe came around to New Jersey and he was playing small clubs, I started photographing him. No one was really interested in Joe, but I took interest, and I love Joe Perry. He's an awesome guitar player, and solo work was great. And I took the opportunity to get to know him at that point. And then when I had some outlets that could help him get some exposure, I would do that, like in some of the magazines. And one of them was We Magazine, where he posed. I used to do this section with, half naked women and with rock stars. It was in We. So Joe was one of my subjects, and gave him his national exposure, nice spread. It's an eye opener, and then you check out his music. I mean, it's publicity. Right. So he doesn't forget that, so I kind of went both ways.
So, but there was an issue with the management of Aerosmith not letting you or many others really get close to the band at that point when they were trying to get them back on track, rehab pretty much, get
Right,
them off
right.
the sauce. Was that done with Mirror's tour, I believe? I guess when they were all back together.
Well, Back in the
And
Saddle was '84, and then '85 is when it happened. I think they were on tour they did a show with the Scorpions. And I was working with the Scorpions, and at that point I was trying to photograph them. I had access during '84, but then when '85 came around, for some reason I didn't get any return calls from management. I wanted to photograph the band, and they were just kind of giving me the runaround, not being straight with me,
right.
And I kind of thought that they were trying to like get rid of everyone from the past and all that. And then at one of the shows, I went up to Steven and I said, is it okay to shoot the show? Management didn't get back to me, and he's like, yeah, of course. Just get a pass from Tim, a manager. I'm like,
Right.
oh, all right, I'll try. He says, just go find him and get a pass. I said, okay. So maybe a half hour before showtime, I couldn't find him. I think it was dodging me or whatever, but I couldn't find him to get the pass. And then I went back there. I saw Steven talking to this manager, and I went up to him. I said, Tim, can you have that photo pass? And he's not going to say no in front of Steven. So
Right.
he gave me a photo pass, and I shot the shot. I started shooting, and then one song into it, I got these security guards just grabbed me out of there. Like, he goes, you can't shoot. I said, what do you mean I can't shoot? And like, that was the last time I shot him. And I found out that he just wanted to make sure that I had nothing to do with Steven anymore. And it got so bad that, and I tried really hard being political about it through the publicist and finding out. And it ended up being so bad that, they said, if you're going to work with Mark and you're not working with me, it was just so stupid, and
yeah, it is stupid. I mean, you're taking their pictures, even if they don't hang backstage. Why not just do your job and make them look amazing?
They were just trying to get anyone that they partied with in the early days, and I was a young kid. I was in my early 20s, if anyone had a bad influence, they had a bad influence on me.
Ain't that the truth?
And then as soon as he got fired, like 10 years later, I went to see who was managing him, and I got a hold of him, and I started working with him again. And now we're close. I've been shooting at all the tours, and when they have a show and Steven does a solo, gig or whatever, he'll call me. And it worked out, full circle.
Yeah, no, that's great. But hey, it's always a smart move to go straight to the top. So talking to Tyler, he's the boss, And speaking of the top, take me to the top. Motley Crue. What era did you first meet them? Was it Shout the Devil or was it Too Fast for Love?
Well, it was right 1982, so it was right in the middle, probably, right?
Between.
Yeah, and we were looking for bands to shoot with naked women for We Magazine.
Did you have any problem finding those bands to do that?
Yeah, no, and they were like one of the first ones, and I talked to the publicist, Bryn Bridenthal, and said, I got the band for you, and we spent the day shooting pictures. They brought their motorcycles and their stage props and
I'm trying to get that picture.
Smoke and everything, and we just had a good time, and we really got to know each other. And Nikki says in the book that it kind of like defined who the band was, and it's not like it's not like it was made like that's how they were every day. I just took a picture of it and put it all in one spot.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that picture. That's what I'm looking at right now. It's so punk rock, Mark. The picture you have of them on the motorcycle.
Oh yeah, right. I was 82.
I have all these marked, and I don't know why I can't.
I got it. Here, right here.
Can you share it with us?
Yeah.
Dude, they were punk rock, man, at that time, in my opinion. Motley Crue was tough. Look at that.
Yeah, they were cool.
That's a great shot.
Yeah.
I thought that really represented the band. Like, it showed their image and their toughness, and they didn't give a shit. And Sunset Strip really captured that one.
It was great. And then I saw them. Then they played the US Festival, and they totally like conquered that one. It's like no one no one really knew who they were except people in LA. And then at the end of the show, everyone knew who they were. They were singing Shout at the Devil. I don't think that came out.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, if someone had a timeline of everything that happened in this era of music, you are at a lot of the tent poles, man. And now it leads to Live Aid. And you were there with Ozzy, correct?
Yeah, the Black Sabbath reunion. You know, whenever Ozzy would do something special, I would, you know, make myself available and make sure I was there. I knew there were these historic moments, and they, you know, Sharon always got me a backstage pass and took care of me. And I just, you know, when they needed photos, I would give it to them, and I, you know, I got their pictures in the magazines. It was a good relationship.
Yeah. Just how was that in general? Just all of Live Aid. I mean, that was an incredible moment in rock and roll history for sure.
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, Judas Priest was there too, but that was it. That's all that represented, like, that, you know, hard rock. Then there was Madonna, and there was, you know, all these other bands. You know, actually Mick Jagger was there with Tina Turner. It was just fun. I remember Jack Nicholson had the dressing room right next to Black Sabbath, and I was like, you know, I was waiting for him to come out because I wanted to take a picture of him, you know. And he kind of peeked his head out, kind of like, you know, like here's Johnny, you know. And I was like, oh my God, I got to ask him if I could take a photo. So I went over to him. I said, I'm Black Sabbath's photographer. He said, you know, do you mind if I take a photo? And he's like, yeah, sure, kid. And he put the cigarette in his mouth, and, you know, he had the sign Jack Nicholson behind him. So that was a classic moment I got.
That's amazing. So I saw this picture in your book, and I was blown away because I'm a big fan of this band, and I had never seen this photograph till now of a very young John Bon Jovi. Look at that. He looks like he's 12 years old, man. I had never seen this picture.
Yeah, neither has he. Actually, I did show him a few years ago. I showed him a few years ago at a gallery show, and I showed him on my phone because he wanted me to send it to him. Like, no, this is going to go in my book before anyone sees it. So I showed it to him, and he couldn't believe it. I didn't even know I had the photograph, and it's like finding that Elvis photo that you never had, you know. And for me anyway, and because I documented his career all the way from Runaway till, you know, present day, and to have that to go back was amazing. So I found that shot when I was looking for photos of Southside Johnny, and he opened up the show. So when I was looking at my Southside Johnny contacts, I saw a contact sheet that said The Rest on it. And at the time, I didn't know that The Rest was Bon Jovi or vice versa. So at that point, when I was doing my book, I kind of figured it out pretty quick. And I looked at the photo, and it looked like John. And I'm like, oh, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh, my goodness. You know, he was 18 there. Yeah, it was like Willie Nile was on the bill with Hole and Oates and Southside Johnny at Freehold Raceway in New Jersey.
That's incredible. And then it eventually leads to Slippery When Wet, which is a fantastic story about that album cover. So you want to share that with us, how it was originally?
Yeah, sure. Well, from there, I did some pictures for Fahrenheit, so then we got to know each other. Went to Farm Aid. I did that with them. And then when the time was to take photographs for the cover, they told me the concept was Wanted. That was the name of the cover, Wanted Dead or Alive. So they all grew beards. Like they were a Billy Kid, like this Western gang, and we did this poster, and then we ended up, there he is. That's yep. And so they all came in one at a time in my studio, and then I made this Wanted poster, and then we went when they were in Vancouver, I found an old warehouse, and, you know, we set up lights and whatnot, and they kind of like did the group shot, and that was supposed to be the cover. Until they got cold feet and they wanted to name it something else, and they ended up coming up with the name Slippery When Wet, and they wanted to, you know, they had to change a heart on the title. So then we had to come up with an idea for that, and that wasn't too hard because we used to go to the strip clubs up in Vancouver after they recorded, and the road signs were all over the place because there was hills, and we just put two and two together. And then when they finished the record, went back to the Jersey Shore where John was renting an apartment down on the beach. We arranged a photo shoot with all the girlfriends and friends, you know, wearing the Slippery When Wet t-shirts. We got them made up, and we pulled some girls from the beach. The girl that ended up being the cover, Tico, and my friend Danny Sanchez, actually we need another girl, like a girl with real big breasts. And so they pulled Angela and we put her right in the front and the center. And then after we did that shoot, you know, John's like, you know, let's let that be, that she should be the cover. So then I reshot her in my studio, a little more controlled lighting, and got the shirt. We dyed it yellow. We cut it up a little bit, you know, provocative, and you know, wet it down a little bit, some ice cubes, you know, get it just right, and you know, we got a cover. And then from there, they printed it up, and at that point, the PMRC was like kind of in full swing, because I was just during all this, you know, I went to the PMRC, so I knew what was going on with these covers, and they didn't want it to seem like they didn't want it to, like, you know, jeopardize any kind of record sales, like in the Walmarts. And I think the record company was oh yeah, there it is.
There's the cover.
Yeah, I think the record companies didn't want to take a chance, because the music was so good. They really wanted to make sure that, you know, nothing would pull them back. So then we had to do another cover, and it ended up being, which is never before seen or even talked about, was the girl with the soap that they spent like $2,000 on this bar of soap and this $1,000 hand model. And I just thought it was a ridiculous idea right from the beginning, but I had to do it. And yeah, the bar of soap, yeah, that's the cover. Wow.
Yeah, I never saw that before your book. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, no one really did. You know, we kept that a secret.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I went through the motions, but I knew it wasn't going to be it. And then we had to come up with something like within a day, and, you know, the record companies, or they would have jeopardized the release of the record. So John just came up and said, I'm coming up. I don't know, just have a black plastic bag. And I'm sure he had what he was wanting to do. And so I had no idea until he came in. 5 minutes in, I put it up, tacked it up, sprayed some water. He said, get some spray bottle and spray some water on it. And he just wrote "Slippery When Wet" once. He just walked out. I said, you want to wait for the Polaroid? He's like, just send that to the record company. That's it. Music's going to speak for itself.
Incredible story, man. It's just an amazing moment, you know?
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah.
And then, of course, Cinderella opened up that tour, and you did their album cover for Night Songs, which I have right here. And this is an incredible photo, too. Now, I'm originally from Philadelphia, so I was a big Cinderella fan growing up. See that coming across. And what I didn't know until I read your book, I didn't know that the shot was taken in Philly, but that made sense to me. But what I didn't know was that the album's called Night Songs, but yet that picture is not taken at night. It looks like it's midnight in a tunnel or something.
Yeah,
How did you work that out? That was in the studio, right?
Yeah, that was done on the street, broad daylight, and you know, Tom couldn't understand why we were shooting in daylight, and I was like, don't worry, just trust me. You know, I shoot day for night. I said, that was what I said to him. He didn't know what I was talking about, but he trusted me. You know, so I set up, you know, pretty much for all those non-tech people that don't know too much about photography. If you have a strobe light, it's so powerful, it wipes out the available light. So that's what happens. And then if you put gels on it and some smoke, it lights it up. So really the blue sky or whatever's in the background is going to turn black. So it's up to you to light that up at this point. So it's pretty much a blank slate. So everything that's there is all lit from me. We had generators, we had smoke machines. You know, it had to be the perfect storm with the smoke and the lights. It was a big production, and he just trusted me. And when they saw the photos, you know, he's like, all right. And that was the first time I shot them, and then we became buddies. And you know, of course, I won him over. I wasn't crazy, and you know, it's just another one of those rock and roll relationships. You know, starting with a photo shoot.
Well, I'll tell you how powerful that photo was to me was as a kid. I discovered when I saw Cinderella, the album, wall-to-wall sound and video in the mall. Remember wall-to-wall sound? It was like a record store, like a Sam Goody type thing. Top shelf was Cinderella with that Night Songs, with that album. And it just drew me to it. I was like, these guys just look like they're badass.
Yeah, that one. And then shortly after or before, probably about the same time, was another one. was Doc and Under Lock and Key.
Yeah.
You know, so,
I brought that up too.
you know, which is like the Spinal Tap of the '80s bands. That shoot, you know, because they didn't. They had this idea to, you know, beef it up because everyone was doing the glam. You know, Poison was just about to break, and the vibe was out, and they were full glam. Motley with Theater of Pain, they were starting to wear kind of glammy stuff. Guns N' Roses was glam in the, you know, in '86 when they came out. So Dokken, even though they were a street band, leather and jeans, they made a decision to kind of go with the flow, and they spent like 10 grand on these outfits. And each one of them, I think the first time they saw them was at the photo shoot. I wish we had a video of that because it'd been hysterical. Each one had a different color. Each one had a different color, and they just kind of braved through that shoot. They weren't happy. They're still not happy. They're still not happy. You know, it's like, we were just on a live stream with my friend Dom Hazard and Tom Elfson from Megadeth. They do a "Oh Say Can You Stream" series, and they had me on to honor my book. And I had all my guests on that you know, had a lot to do with in the book. So Dom was one of them. And when we started talking about some of the shoots, they don't want to talk about it. It's like they're embarrassed by it. And it's like, you know what? Everything happens for a reason. If you were a 14, 15-year-old kid and you saw that image, it popped out. You know, it just popped out. And, you know, it was their biggest selling record.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's because of the cover, but, you know, you just never know. You got to just take it for what it's worth. And
I think it's all relative. I really do. At that time.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, how many albums did you buy? I know I can say as a kid, how many did you buy that you just bought because of the artwork? I would take a gamble all the time. That's how I discovered a lot of the records.
Well, my first record that I bought, it was 1974. And for some reason, it was the Rush album with the pink lettering. I don't know why. I never heard of them. And then when I heard it, it sounded like Led Zeppelin on speed. You know, it's like I liked it. You know, but I bought it because of that cover, and it's a really terrible cover. You know, it's like someone drew it, and you know, and there was a pink lettering. I remember but it drew as a 14-year-old. You know, when you're 14. You got a different mindset than when you're like 16, 17 and, you know, a little more cool, you know? So
right.
A lot of the genre, a lot of the music from the 80s, really a lot of the kids are, you know, were 12, 13, 14.
Yeah. And you know, another moment that I thought you captured perfectly was out of all these bands of that era, none of them, in my opinion, fit into the mold of CBGBs except for one. Guns N' Roses were, in my eyes, even though they're from LA, if they were from New York, they would have been a CBGB's band. And I love how you captured them when they performed Unplugged there. I have a bootleg of that somewhere on DVD.
Yeah.
And you captured those pictures outside.
Yeah.
And they were a CBGB's band, even though they weren't a CBGB's band. Does that make sense?
Yeah. They were in New York that week. You know, they came into New York for a week. They played the Ritz, I think, and they came up to my studio. We did a photo shoot, and you know, they invited me to tag along with them wherever they went. So I just kind of was on them like glue, and I love the music. I mean, how could you not? And they gave me the access, you know, and you know, I did a shoot the year before in '86 when they were glammed up, and so that's how I first met them. And you know, I just try to stay as tight as I can with these artists as they go up to, you know, they play theaters, arenas, stadiums. They were one that I wanted to be part of, and you know, they didn't let a lot of people in their circle, but they let me. They trusted me and they liked me, and those shoots at New York definitely solidified our connection.
Right. I feel Metallica's probably cut from a similar rock as Guns N' Roses. Was there a trust, like if they trust you, I feel like there's a good in there with them. Especially, I mean, you took a lot of great photos of Metallica with Cliff Burton, and then after with Cliff, and that was some of those photographs. I mean, one of the ones that always resonated in my head was the leather jackets overlooking the bridge.
Yeah,
that's such a tough photo. I think that represents Metallica better than any picture I've seen, you know, as a kid.
Yeah, that was a tough time for everyone because that was their first photo shoot they did without Cliff.
Right.
The record company hired me to spend the day with them. We went to the bridge and we did some stuff at rehearsal, and yeah, I mean, they bounced back really quick, and fortunate that they chose me, because, you know, here I have photos 30 years later, 35 years later to talk about.
Yeah, oh, no doubt. And I mean, the other thing I noticed about your book, fans, it's not just about the artist. You have great pictures of the fans who were behind all this killer music. And do you know any of those fans in the pictures, or are they just random shots?
Without the fans, there would be no concerts, you know. And I always, whenever I was in the photo pit, I mean, I was on the other side of the photo pit, you know, for a good like 5 or 6 years, and I always like wonder what it was like to be in the photo pit. And then when I was in the photo pit, I look behind me before the show. When I'm done backstage, I'm looking behind, and I like to observe, and I take pictures, you know, because, you know, I waiting around, I'm antsy and getting warmed up, and I'm looking for moments, and I take pictures of the audience. So I never really pulled them out of my archives. Most of them are black and white. Some of them most of them, actually, no, I shoot color too. And in my chapter openers, there are so many photos that were left out. I felt it was important to include some other photos. So my album covers are in the opening chapters, in the chapters, as well as a photo of me with the band, and a photo of just me, and then a fan photo in every chapter. So here's I have a site, thedecadethatrocked.com. And I have I have a merch shop where I sell my book in different bundles and T-shirts and things. But I also have interviews with other artists. I have featured videos, and if you scroll all the way down, I have a section called Fanatic, and I post fan photos, and I have fan mail that I had in a box that I still have. Actually, at the end of the book, there's next to Eddie Trunk's afterword is one of the letters from one of the fans. So I have all these letters, and I have these fan photos. So I kind of put it in this Decade That Rocked site. So this picture right now is up. I'll show you, of the Def Leppard show, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
So if you're one of those girls in there, or anybody, the first one, I'm going to post this on my Facebook, and it's on my site now, The Decade That Rocked. And I want to get you a photograph of that photo, plus a photo from the show that you were at. So I'm trying to connect. So I'm going to be doing that like once a week. I'm going to have every year. There's 10 years. There's a different fan photo, and you know, you can see they have the T-shirt on, so we pretty much know where it is. So I'm going to try to get it around social media and see if we can find those people and connect with them. And you know, they have to show me. They have to prove to me it's them. You know, they have to show me, you know, whether it's they have that, you know, scarf or the shirt, or show me a picture that, you know, I got to know it's them, because people change it for 30 years, you know. So, you know, show me a ticket stub, something. And, you know, the first one or two, you know, I'll see how it goes. But if you can identify yourself and on social media, you know, I have The Decade That Rocked on my Instagram and Facebook. You know, I'll be posting there, and also on my Mark Weiss photography on my social media. But yeah, so when you look at it, if you get the book and you're one of those people in the book, when I post, make sure you're the first one, and I'll get you that signed photo of that, from that concert, and the photo of you.
I think that's incredible. And Mark, I hate to do this. Instagram's kicking us off here in about a minute and a half, and I have so many more questions to ask you. It kind of sucks. I would love to do this again with you and continue a lot of questions that I have regarding Skid Row, Poison, and much more. Yeah. But I know that the official release will be the 15th, which is coincidentally your birthday. So happy birthday!
Thank you.
That, and you'll be interviewed by Eddie Trunk.
Yes, indeed, I will be. It's my my unofficial re-release, because of Black Tuesday. I was supposed to be on Eddie Trunk on Tuesday, but because I'm respectful for the community and the music community, all band together. So unfortunately, my release date is now, you know, it happened, but this is going to be my own personal celebratory release date with Eddie Trunk on his show on
on
Volume.
the 15th.
Yeah.
That's going to be great. I'm going to look forward to that. I just want to thank you again, not just for being here with me today, but I really mean it. Your pictures meant a lot to me throughout the years, and any rock and roller out there who grew up wanting to be a rock star was definitely because of you, not just the music.